How many tries does it take a dumb art kid to emulate Multicam in a way that doesn't look like it came from Wish.com? The answer is 3. It took me 3 tries. Stay tuned, we're painting with stencils. What is up, guys? My name is John with pewpewtactical.com, your definitive source for gun reviews, gear guides, and having a host that's very tired because I've been staring at a swatch of Multicam, just trying to figure out what makes it tick, you know? What makes Multicam Multicam? You ever think about that, bro? Sit down, I'm gonna tell you. Okay, so first things first here. As you can see right off the bat, I'm painting over a previous failed attempt at getting both this pattern and the color palette involved down in a manner that's reasonably accurate to the Multicam Arid scheme that I'm going for. While the colors are probably going to be easier to replicate with an airbrush and Cerakote paints if you're really determined, I personally prefer aerosol model paints, ultimately settling on a mixture of paints from both Model Masters and a nice matte tan color from Montana. The first layer you see me spraying down here is Modern Desert Sand from Model Masters, and after you give the gun a nice even coat, it is on to your first layer of stencils. I use the Multicam Shape Stencil Pack from Freedom Stencils, and it does the job quite well. If you look at Multicam Arid, you'll notice that the highest layer is going to be your whitish tan one, and it manifests throughout the pattern as a series of medium-sized splotches whose ends or tips are usually pointed downwards. Additionally, the whitish tan layer is not spread uniformly across the pattern, instead appearing in clusters that run in a slashing motion at almost a 45-degree angle before disappearing and leaving more space for what will be the other colors underneath it. I told you guys I stared at the shit for way too long. Next, we're going to move to our darkest coat, and for this layer I've again used Tester's Model Masters Light Earth Aerosol to give us a nice darker brown color. If this is your first time using stencils like it was mine, you might have a hard time wrapping your head around what exactly we're doing here. But now that we've got the white sand layer protected with stencils, we can now begin to apply the other colors that sit below it in the Multicam Arid pattern, if that makes sense. Spray the whole gun, avoid any buildup or overspray if possible, and it's stencil time once more. I mean, let it dry, but you knew that. Come on in with more medium-sized stencils from the same sheet as your sandy white layer, and begin laying them down on the gun in a similar manner, but with a few key differences. The darkest layer of brown in Multicam Arid, to me, looks like it generally occupies more space on the gun than the white top layer, and while there are still some areas that are to be left void, get comfortable with making these stencils a little bit more claustrophobic. Make sure you're both using more of those small splotchy circles in the pattern for this layer, as well as overlaying at least some of the dark brown stencils over our last layer's stencils. From there, you're good to move on to the next layer, a sort of sandy, khaki, greenish color that I had a hell of a time finding in an aerosol, eventually settling for Model Masters Strategic Air Command Tan. You're now going to move on to some of the larger, more complex shapes in your stencil pack, as our green layer essentially competes for dominance on the gun with the tan layer that's going to be coming next. As these stencils are much larger, have them occupy both open space as well as intersect previous stencils. We're now in our home stretch. For our final layer, I opted for a tan color called Marrakesh in the Montana 94 can line, as it just kind of fit the color profile I was looking for much better than anything else that I had around me. And I also forgot to mention that I came in and added some very faint slashing stripes with the Marrakesh before applying those green layer stencils, and it just kind of creates a neat gradient effect that you can kind of see here that blends those two colors quite well. Once that final layer is dry, you can now begin removing every stencil layer to reveal the masterpiece before you. Unless you fucked it up, but that's okay, it's paint. You can always go back and give it another shot like I did. Hopefully, however, this gives you a fundamental understanding of just how we achieved this pattern by painting from the top layer down, if that still hasn't clicked yet. And if it hasn't, don't beat yourself up, it took me 3 tries. Overall, I'm quite happy with the paint job, and as someone who routinely nerds out on the details of the things I'm interested in, trying to reverse engineer the Multicam pattern from scratch was a pretty fun little brain teaser once I actually began unraveling it. You don't necessarily have to follow my instructions to a T. In fact, I think experimenting is one of the most fun parts of rifle arts and crafts time, but there's also something to be said for figuring out the method behind militarized Rorschach splotches, even if maybe I'm just giving myself pareidolia psychosis in doing so. So, give it a shot and let me know how it went for you.
In my opinion, too many people don't let themselves experiment with paint jobs because they're not artistically inclined or whatever, but everyone's faking it till they make it, and you're not going to figure out just what kind of faking it works for you unless you give it a shot. Yes, the gun has a grip fin. Go outside.
Alright guys, that's going to do it for us today. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed the content, please go ahead and subscribe to the channel. Yes, you specifically. Then you also specifically ring the bell. That'll tell you when we post new videos. It's almost always Thursdays at 2:30 Pacific time PM. If you want more of me in an absolute fugue state from painting a rifle for like 3 weeks, post a camo pattern below and I'll show you how to do it. It'll take me a while to make it look good, but we'll get there. My name's John with PP Tactical. Buy the shirt that I'm wearing, or an approximation thereof. Bye!